Hello, my name is Roger Claxton and welcome to this series of bite-sized talks entitled Poor on the Moor. The talks are in segments and based on the records in the Widecombe archive and the project that commenced in 2011 to digitise and catalogue them. The wealth of detail in the archives tell the story of how the poor were looked after long before the welfare state existed as we know it today. This is very much a tale of local action. Based on the legal framework of the time, money was raised locally and mostly spent locally on provision as wide as pensions, accommodation, clothing, medical assistance and burial. These talks are based on the contents of the recently published book Welfare in Widecombe 1700 to 1900 written by me. You can get a copy through our website widecombe-in-the-moor.com/welfare and various other outlets. There are also ebook versions available. All the profits from this book go to local Widecombe and Dartmoor causes. The book is A4 sized, extensively illustrated with example images from the archives, and transcripts are provided in the majority of cases. If you find it on Amazon, you can look inside and see for yourself. So this is the first segment of the Poor on the Moor series of talks and provides some background to the talks and to the project. The talks are broken down into the segments shown here. You can pick and choose which ones you're interested in or watch them all in sequence. The aim is to keep them roughly to about 5 to 10 minutes each, not always easy to do. There are some additional resources available to you. I've already mentioned the book Welfare in Widecombe, but there's also widecombearchive.org.uk/welfare, which contains some material that came to light after publication of the book, and also has a full transcript of the 1804 and 1805 church wardens and overseers accounts, which were too lengthy to include in the book. More will be said on the digital archive in a moment. There is also a page, widecombearchive.org.uk/poor on the moor, which we will use to publish any additional information that comes to light as a result of these presentations. Finally, we do value your feedback, good and bad, and if you have information that we are unaware of, we'd love to hear it. Please send your feedback to history@widecombe-in-the-moor.com. Just a quick word on the digital archive itself. The segment on the digitising project will explain things more fully, but suffice to say there are 17,000 images in the archive so far, of which a good proportion are available online. These have all been catalogued, and in many cases names, places and dates have been recorded and are searchable. To get started, visit www.widecombearchive.org.uk. So, enough of the preamble, let's get down to some detailed background. Poor provision in Widecombe, as elsewhere, is based on a well-established framework that became law towards the end of the reign of Elizabeth I, but had long been local custom. It had its origins in the tithe system, from which a proportion of the money raised was destined for the poor, but one way or another this ceased to be, even though the tithes continued to be levied. Over the centuries, the Poor Law Acts were refined and altered. The final act in the period under consideration was the introduction of the workhouse model, which wrested control of the poor from purely local hands in the so-called interests of efficiency and with an aim of preventing indolence and malingering, etc., whether they existed or not. Sidney and Beatrice Webb's book provides a detailed look at both the old and new poor laws, and the book Welfare in Widecombe has a bibliography of some other books that cover the same subject. It is important to define what is meant by welfare. I've been quite broad in my own definition. Money was raised locally from landowners and/or occupiers, and then spent in a variety of ways, mostly for the poor, but also for the upkeep of the church and its rituals, as well as for other things such as highway maintenance. So it was not just the poor that benefited from the expenditure. It has to be said that quite a lot of money was spent on legal matters relating to the enforcement of the poor laws. Just one example of this, the law of settlement, required that everyone had a legal parish to which they belonged. If they were found in a parish to which they did not belong, then proceedings could be initiated to return them to their rightful parish. This could be a lengthy and expensive process. We investigate one example of this in the segment on removal orders. One should also define who could be included in the poor. In general, these were people who had no other means of support, whether from their own resources or of their family. It included the elderly, who were effectively paid a pension, the sick and incapacitated, which could be a temporary condition such as a broken leg or more permanent. Expectant single mothers were another important category. Even those falling on hard times could apply for help, and one-off payments could be made in these cases to those in need. I have included the bone idle in the list, although I don't think any in this category would have got very far or received very much sympathy. Note that I have not found an official definition of who might be included, although there is probably one to be found in one or more of the Acts of Parliament. Okay, so that's the end of the first segment, which I hope has set the scene a little bit for you. Please stay with us for the next segment, which discusses the digitising project. Thanks for listening.
Thou lift me up and lay me down, gently down, till I reach consecrated ground along the old litch way, along the old litch way, along